How's it going, guys? Alright, so this is part 4 of the Groomsmen Swords that I built. The last one you saw me cover basically the pommel, the handle, the accent piece, and the guard. In that video, it was, like I said, pretty long. I went over all 5 swords worth of every single part. For this video, I'm going to cover everything that pertains to grinding the blade itself. And I'm just going to cover one sword, not all 5. Just to kind of shorten it down and slow down the process so you guys can see it not being so repetitive like the last one. But I'll end up going over the hollow grind, the edge grind, the tip grind, and all the texturing that I did down the spine of the blade. At the very end, I'll go over how I blacken the steel and sand it down so it has that kind of that two-tone look. But hopefully you guys are really digging the videos. I'll jump right into it and hope you guys enjoy. Take care. Alright guys, so last we left off was me marking my essential guidelines for all my grinds with the Sharpie and the good old trusty calipers. And here I am on the TW90. I have it in the vertical position with the small wheel attachment arm on and a 3-inch contact wheel. And what I've got rigged up here is kind of a makeshift jig. It's the same jig that I had made for the fantasy sword. And essentially what I have is I have holes drilled and tapped for for basically my handle hardware. Those four screws you see there. So that's keeping the blade basically placed in line, and I have a clamp on the far right tip of the blade just to keep it supported and flat against the aluminum angle. And really, it's just a piece of, I believe, 4 or 5 inch by 5 inch L angle, made from 1/4 inch aluminum. And I purchased a really big, long 1/4 inch thick piece of steel, and that's the base plate that I'm basically going, back and forth on as a support. Right underneath that steel plate, I have, you can see a little silver ring and then some blue. The silver ring, that is a 25-pound magnet. I've got about 4 of them on my tool rest, and that blue part down there, that is the actual tool rest for the for the TW90. On the right side and the left side, it was a pretty long piece of steel, so I could bring it all the way across left and all the way across right. So I have some supports on the left and the right, at the very top, pieces of wood for it to stay stable and stay horizontal. But anything could be a jig. Anything that helps you work more consistent. There's a lot of people out there that do this by hand. I've tried it on a cleaver. It's pretty difficult. It took some finesse. It was the very first cleaver I ever made, and it was a hollow grind that I did on the 12-inch contact wheel, and that was a learning lesson. Especially when you're doing large runs and you want to keep everything consistent. That's what works for me. But anything can be a jig. Anything that can help you speed up your process and make it more accurate. That's what I'm all about. And the only downside of using magnets, to hold that plate steel on, is all the shavings of metal that come off. You can see them collecting right there and sticking because the magnets are basically transferring all the way through the steel plate and upward. And I've got basically a glass receptacle with a little bit of water in it, and that's what you see me stopping every few minutes and pushing the shavings into that. As you can see, it's sparking a lot.
those shavings are very fine steel, almost like a steel wool, and they will catch fire. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. If you have a large buildup of dry, steel shavings, it could be a pretty disastrous scenario. When I started out, the grinds, I wasn't trying to be too consistent. I was trying to go across as consistent as I could, but basically just trying to hog material out. At this point, excuse me, at this point I'm getting to the edges of the grind lines of the guidelines that I had scribed on there. So I'm just using those as a reference to make sure, everything's staying straight and true, and those guidelines being there, it lets me know that it's an even grind all the way down. And right there, just notching out that side. And basically for those, far right and far left notches, I just use the edge of the wheel and the edge of the belt itself. That way it tapers down. It's not like a hard edge where the grind starts and stops. But again, like I was saying, this is where I'm just trying to hog out material, trying to keep it, consistent, but not worried too much how consistent it is at this point. It's good to keep in mind how large of a diameter, if you do a hollow grind, how large of a diameter you're using. Too small will take away a lot of material before getting that width that that you want. And if you do that on both sides, you have a potential to make that center way too thin and maybe even break through. I've yet to do that. Usually I do all my calculations in CAD first, make sure my material is true to the thickness that it needs to be. With the 3-inch wheel, it left about 12 thousandths, just shy of an 1/8 inch of material, in the center between both grinds. So more than enough meat there. I talk a lot about the TW90, but it really is a good investment and really, really versatile. Comes with all kinds of different, attachments and way to remount any of your rests, your tool rests or anything like that. It came with the flat platen. It came with the small wheel arm. Basically, that wheel that I'm grinding on now, if you look just a few inches behind that, there's a wheel facing us that's not spinning. Basically, you can just loosen that plate and flip around. If you have another wheel like there is on there, you can just flip it around and tighten it back up, and you're good to grind on a second wheel. So it's pretty handy if you're doing grinds between two different wheels. Everything's real easy setup, breakdown, switch between tools. Even switching between horizontal and vertical. It's really, really nice, handy machine. And man, it hogs out material like a beast. The belt itself is a 60 grit belt. And I believe this particular belt and the one that I used in the last video was a Blaze Precision belt. Not a bad belt. Really, really nice. Actually, you know what? If this is a red belt, it's not a Blaze. The orange belts are the Blaze. Those ones I really like. The red belt might be a combat abrasive ceramic belt. Yeah, typically the Norton Blaze, the orange ones, 60 grit, just hog material out. Alright, there's that all done. The red combat abrasive belt, I think I ordered 2 or 3 of those just to test out. They're not bad, but they definitely don't have the long-lasting life. Alright, so like I said, not to make you sit through all 5 blades worth. There they all are. You know, hollow ground, done. There's the parts from the last video. And now we'll be setting up to do the edge grind. I can't for the life of me remember, I think it may have been a 60 or a 65 degree. You know, it may have even been 45 degree, I can't remember. But I wanted a nice beefy edge for these edge grinds. And basically I'll take them up, you know, from basically the center of the material up to where my hollow grind, you know, just to where it comes to. So the edge of the grind will come right up to the edge of where the hollow grind scoops, you know, scoops upward. No particular reason. I just, you know, I just think it looks really neat, and it looks pretty fierce. And again, like I said in the last video, there's a million different ways to do things. This is just how I do it. A million different ways you can grind to get different results. You know, there's, you know, like I said, the hollow grind, the straight edge grind. There's, you know, many different grinds. The I think that is where I called it done, or maybe I just shaved a little bit off. But a convex grind is another grind that I do not too often, but every now and then. It's not such a harsh grind. It gives kind of a curvature to the grind itself, just because you're using the slack of the belt instead of something straight and rigid like the flat platen. For this part here, I have a headlamp on, basically a light, you know, like you would take camping or caving or anything like that. That little area where the belt meets the edge of the material, I really needed light down there, and you know, that's a good way to get light in little tiny areas. Because I want to make sure when I finish, I want to hit that grind line or the guide line, and have both the edge bevels meet. And just going back, making sure everything meets up. Calling that good. So there's where you see that guideline. It's definitely a good reference point to have. And this was a pretty steep angle doing the tips, and I gotta say, out of all the grinds that I've done, this grind here was the hardest. And by the time I got done with the fifth sword, you know, I'd gotten the groove down, but it was pretty trying to get that grind, you know, to meet up flush on both sides. You'll see here in a little bit when I hit the other side, I start getting some burning because the steel gets too hot. I probably should have used the water misting system just to cool the steel, but you know, I didn't think that little bit would matter. But I really like the end result, the way it came out, that grind, the way it just flows into the other two grinds. And I believe this may have been the same grind that I did on the fantasy sword. I can't remember, but probably something close to it or similar to it. You know, your angle of attack for a grind like this, oh yep, that's where I got just a little too hot, a little too much heat. But the angle of attack is just really critical, especially starting at the tip and working your way back and keeping that a consistent flow, you know, keeping the blade moving as you go. Try and get some focus on there. There we go. All right, yeah, so that's where I was trying to get that grind just to hit at the tip and come all the way down where it meets the edge of the blade. Right there at that point. I knew, again, this is just regular steel. If this was a tool steel, you'll definitely want to try and keep that basically tip from heating up too much. Because once you start seeing discolorations in the steel, it's game over. And here we are. Just I had some thumb jimping, thinking it was kind of a neat little, you know, dilly bob to add to the sword. I just put a little tiny grind against it. Alright, so here comes the texturing down the spine. I really wasn't sure what to do here. I was just kind of playing around. Usually I'll freehand these kind of grinds, but I knew I wanted to reference these details I put, you know, in the design. I had no idea what they were going to be. I didn't think they were going to be sharp, but I knew I could use those to, you know, add some elements to texture around. So essentially where those little half circles are cut out, I went really deep and really steep with the grinds, and in between those I'm dividing the space in between into, I believe it was thirds for 2 deeper grinds, and then divided those out as well. Yeah, 3 in the middle and then little ones right across the top. And if I'm correct, I put some more small ones at the very end across both sides. And the reason why you see me like grind and then pull it back and then grind and then pull it back, I want to make sure that I'm going the depth that I want, because I really don't want the grind to come down into the hollow grind. I want it to get close but not run into it. So, you know, once you do a few grinds, you'll start to feel like, you know, how much pressure, what angle to hold it at. You know, like I said, these ones I'm just freehanding. Once you get in the groove, you'll just kind of know, like, all right, that's probably where I should stop and check. You know, because it's definitely easy to remove more material to get to the depth that you want, then go too deep and realize that it just got drastically messed up. Which, you know, I've done that before in the past on a cleaver, and to combat that, I just made it a battle distressed cleaver. Used it to the advantage, and it came out pretty cool. So again, just dividing into three deeper grinds, and then going at a less steep angle just to do some smaller grinds in between. Now the tip was where I was kind of trying to figure out, should I do grinds here? Should I do tiny grinds, deep grinds? Where should I stop it? So I just kind of eyeballed getting to the tip and then stopping right right at the edge of that bevel that we just ground. Yeah. Now for the other side. Oh, and this is the 1/2-inch small wheel that I have on the small wheel attachment. I'm sorry, not small wheel, contact wheel. They do make metal contact wheels. These ones being black, that black is rubber. So the wheel itself has a little bit of give when you grind. I haven't used a steel one, but I assume it has a, it produces the same result, just with a finer, harder edge, because you're grinding against something that's metal. And it looks like I did switch to my to the orange belt, the 60 grit blades precision. But ceramic belt's definitely a way to go, for sure. I had ordered quite a few packs of different grit belts, different types of belts over the past few years, and they're all from different companies, different makers. And I don't really deviate too much from these 60 grit Nordens. And I like not going, to a finer grit to get, a mirror finish or anything like that. I had done that for years on the aluminum cosplay swords that I made. I polished those things, brought them through all kinds of grits. And you could basically use some of them as mirrors. They were just so high polished, but I'm liking the battle distressed, the dirtiness, that steel, that you can make steel, especially in the blackening process. Alright, and I think, yeah, alright, so now here I am at a really, really drastic angle, and I'm just doing little tiny grinds, little tiny notches in between. As you can see by my back thumb, there's some pretty hard edges there, and I'm just going through and knocking them down, little tiny grinds, just add a little bit more texture and kind of play around with it. In my mind, I knew that I was going to be doing kydex, and having those edges not knocked down, that would have made the world of kydex, and this, going in and out of a kydex sheath be torment, because kydex will grip any type of contour you have, and yeah, all the way down the spine of the blade would not have been a good time. So it was kind of that in mind why I wanted to knock all those down. And there they are, all textured up. Right after this, I'll take some acetone and wipe all the Sharpie off, because once I'm done with all my grinding, there's no need for it to be there. Acetone is the best way to get, Sharpie off, paint off, any gooey stuff you got, stickiness, substances, come right off. A lot of steel, they'll have grease marker or paint pins, written with the type of steel, and it'll take that right off as well. Oh, that one I did do a different grind on the spine right at the tip, just an angle, just to figure, give one of them a different look. Alright, so there's the Birchwood Casey Permablue. I work through Permablue, Super Blue, You know, aluminum black. Birchwood Casey makes all kinds of different solutions that will darken, you know, steel, bronze, brass, copper, you know, in any material you got. I think the only one I haven't found is stainless. But it's a great solution. You know, if you apply it to steel, you know, it'll darken it. It's essentially used for guns, for, you know, bluing your stocks or anything like that. Any parts, accent pieces. If you've got a scratch, you know, you can repair it, you know, cosmetically. But I like to heat up the steel with a heat gun first, and it reacts quite a bit faster than normal. But my purpose, you know, it's a bit of a rust resistant as well. But my purpose is basically just for visuals. You know, I'll darken the whole blade. You know, anything that has a grind to it, or anything that can have a kind of a texture to it, I'll blue it, blacken it. It's called perma blue, but it's essentially a blackening solution. So now that they're all black, I'll take a little bit of a fine grit sandpaper and just work it over the flat surfaces. I'm not trying to get into the grinds. I'm just trying to take off basically anything that's flat or any high spots to try and get a contrast. Now the big hollow grind, I love the shine that it comes from, that comes from it. So I will get in there and kind of pull some of that out. But you know, from using that heavy grit, the 60 grit belt, you get real thick grind lines. And this Birchwood Casey will get into those deeper crevices, and it'll give it a nice, like, almost battle worn, older type feel. You know, almost I mean, it is a patina, but not necessarily a forced patina or anything. There we go. And hand sanding the other side, and then 5 more swords. And there we go. All are done up. You see how there's that kind of pitting. There's the grinds right there. It kind of brings that out. Gives texture. Gives depth. Gives a more antiqued or older type feel. It's just a personal thing that I like. But I think it adds a lot of character, you know, a lot of character to the steel itself. But that's essentially going to wrap up this video. The next video, I'm going to be going over the Kydex sheaths that I make for all of them, as well as the leather bits that I made to go, you know, just below the hilt. So here's a sneak peek of the Kydex all set up and ready to go. And the leather that I cut on the Glowforge, all those bits and the straps right here. So keep an eye out. Thanks for watching. Take care.